so introduce this meetup. This is on the topic of the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? And what I'd like to do first is go around the room, say your name, and remember I warned you on the site, in 15 words or less, tell me what you think is the meaning of life.
15 words or less.
Yeah,
okay.
just kind of summarize your position, your view, or just say something. What do you think encapsulates the meaning of life?
My name is Shri Ram Karpur. You can call me Ram, R-A-M. It's easy. For me, meaning of life is, if you try to go and try to find meaning of life, you might not find it. But if you can live your life intensely, you will understand it.
My name is Christopher, and I guess the meaning of life, I would say, is to be present, expand, be loving, serve ourselves, and serve God.
My name is John Worf, and this is the answer that I have to give. Without further clarification of terminology, the question is unanswerable in its current form. Sorry.
I ran out of time. I couldn't get it done. I'm going to pass.
Okay, that's fine.
I think there is no meaning to life or purpose to life. I think we're here by the grace of God, and we just
My name is Brandon Klotz. I'm a college student, philosophy and theology. And you put me on the spot, so I had to quick write something. Purpose of life. I think this is very sketchy because I didn't have time to think about it, but to live with 16 words, not 15. To live with a logically consistent worldview that takes into account the past, the present, and the future.
My name is Susan, and one reason I'm here is because of this question. And it's something I've thought about a long time over the years, and I think I've concluded that the meaning of life is whatever one chooses to give meaning to.
I'm Sue. I'm going to give further details in a small presentation, but I just think everybody has to find their own meaning in life.
Okay. Very good. And maybe I'll save mine until my actual presentation. I'll do it here in a few minutes. And since we're talking about yours, you want to go ahead and start off?
When I was a senior in high school, one of my teachers, I don't remember what class it was, assigned an essay to write. What is the whole true purpose of man's existence? And the best one he came up from what people had written was, the whole true purpose of our existence is to ask that question. Okay, so according to our scientific models and the eminent cosmologist, William Lane Craig, the universe will suffer a heat death. But well before that happens, the sun will expand to a red dwarf and incinerate the Earth. And before that, we will likely become extinct because of any number of reasons, such as being hit by a larger asteroid, annihilating each other, or a severe climate shift. Is there some ultimate purpose for our having been here? I don't know. But I'm okay with that. And I'm not going to make something up just because I don't know. So, yes, everything that's ever happened on Earth will be futile. But we're here, so we've got two choices on how to deal with it. We can either become depressed and drink the Kool-Aid, or find a way to deal with it. So the way I look at it is meaning comes in layers. Everybody can have religious meaning in their life, a personal meaning, meaning within society, a meaning as part of the earth or the universe, and even people who believe that there's religious significance to their life participate in society and find things that are important to them. I don't know any religious people facing a critical illness who say, oh, good, I finally get to go to heaven. No, they fight it tooth and nail. They want to stay here. They have things they want to do. They have people that they are attached to. So what I'm trying to say is everybody has a lot of different meanings to their life that they think is important. So we all have to find our own meaning, which could be involved in things like helping others, helping to make a better society, to make our environment better, and things like that.
Okay. Reaction.
Now that we're all depressed?
No, we're all depressed yet.
Are you depressed?
Yes, the earth is going to burn up.
You didn't know that?
Yes, I did. I just didn't need to be reminded.
I mean, 5 billion years is a long time from now. I'm not really particularly concerned about what happens then.
I thought it was only going to be like 4.5 billion.
I'm not going to be around then.
Either way.
A billion years is a long time.
Your phraseology of to carry on from your comment, to become depressed or to find a way to deal with it, implies to me that it's some sort of punishment.
No, I didn't mean it that way. It was in reaction to to William Lane Craig's thing. Everything's gonna go away. So if you can't find meaning in another existence, then it's all futile and all that. So it was just kind of a takeoff on that. I didn't really mean it. I didn't mean it that way.
Because I don't feel as though you have to have a meaning or a higher purpose to your life for it to be purposeful.
Neither do I. And if I insinuated that, I didn't mean it.
So how does that work? How do you find purpose in life without an ultimate purpose?
Well, I think you express your joie de vivre or your self in relationships with other people, in your own self-value and the way you relate to the planet and the people on the planet, and how you find your path regardless of whether it's through science or any path in faith. I think the important thing is to find your own personal roadmap for life and go with it. I'm not totally into accepting things in life. I think there's passion in the word compassion, and I think that sometimes we just have to fight. I'm not into we should all just lie down and accept life as it is. I think we have responsibilities to keep our children safe, to make our life safe, and not to accept suffering, to rail against it.
But in the end, what does it really matter? I mean, once you pass off the scene, once your children pass off the scene, what does it really matter?
Well, does it need to matter? I mean, isn't that egotistical? Why should I matter more than a sliced banana? I mean, that's very egotistical, vain, proud. I don't
Think that I have more value than that banana is egotistical and vain and proud.
Depends on how you are.
No, I think everybody has their own intrinsic value, their own sense of self-worth, and wherever that is in relation to everything else in your own perception is your perception.
Okay, let's go around and let's have some more comments.
Yeah, I just had a sort of a question. It seems like you're saying there's no necessarily ultimate purpose, but people can create their purpose in their life. And so I think it was the same way. Where's this direction coming from? Where's this connection? You're just like, are you making up purpose randomly? Or like, because I understand it from a different way. Like, I connect to something that's greater than myself, and that gives my life direction. So I'm just trying to understand where this direction is coming from. Because if you're just picking randomly, it doesn't seem like it's going to get you to happiness. You're just going to keep avoiding pain, and that will get you lost, even more lost than we might be right now. So like, where is this direction coming from? Are you just picking out random experiences from your life and then like writing them down in a journal and picking randomly? I'm just curious how you come to these conclusions if there's no greater ultimate purpose. How are you concluding what's your life purpose? How can you be sure about that? It's just a question.
Well, it's the things that are important. It's not just random things. It's things that are important to you. Relating to your family and friends, doing something meaningful. You don't just throw a dart and say that's it. It's I think it's something that you have to develop over the years. What you think is the most important to you.
What's the criteria for something being important to you?
I think everybody has to determine for themselves what they feel are the most important things in life. Like I feel family is important. I feel passing on the things to my kids, things like that.
Those things that like resonate with you. And sometimes when you do things or you encounter things, you just feel this moment of this is right. This is where I'm supposed to be. Could that be a criteria on how to measure? Versus sometimes you do things and you just feel tight.
Well,
that feeling you have, would that be?
Yeah.
Gives like where the direction comes from.
So, yeah, I mean, assuming everyone on Earth did that, and they had these moments of connection, and mine was eating pineapple or something, and I thought, wow, this is great, and everyone determined, I think maybe the question is there meaning that applies to every person's life? Because if I take, okay, this was really enjoyable to me, and someone else takes, well, that was enjoyable to me, and they're two opposites, well, that's, if we take subjective, you'd have to almost find people to live with that have the same moment, experience, connection that you have. So maybe the question I have is there something that supersedes just subjective, individual?
I don't think so. This is one. A lot of these topics that we discuss. I usually say I think we have more. There's more of an absolute aspect to it, but I think meaning in your life is subjective. It's relative.
Maybe.
Francis Schaeffer talks about, I understood you to be like advocating existentialism, and Francis Schaeffer talks about one guy having existential fulfillment by helping a grandma across the street. The other guy has existential fulfillment by running her over.
Well,
so, how do we determine right meaning versus wrong meaning? Is there anything transcendental? Is there like a transcendental? I think that's kind of what Brandon was getting at.
Yeah, because both, they conflict each other.
I think everyone in this room would agree that the guy who gets existential meaning from running the grandma needs to go to jail.
Existentially.
I don't think anyone here would ever question that.
That's kind of
I don't know
irrelevant.
that ethics. I mean, you've posed more a question of ethics than you've posed a question of the meaning of life. I mean, it's one thing to propose a hypothetical world where there is a guy whose meaning of life is running over little old grandmas, but I don't
Actually,
know
I think it's reversed. I think you're posing the ethics by saying that that person's meaning is wrong because it's unethical.
Well, I am saying that.
Yeah.
But
If you're just blanketly
well, I
taking
guess what I'm
meaning
saying is,
away.
who does that? What's the point of hypothesizing that if there isn't?
I mean,
someone?
some people get their kicks that way, right? I mean, right? Some people get their kicks that way.
I think everybody has certain things that deep down they feel are important. And it might be different for different people.
I'll give another example. My wife is extremely passionate about working in an office, in an architect's office. She's an architect. But since she's here with me as a dependent on a visa, she has no permission to work unless she gets her own work permit. So she's extremely sad all the time for 5 years. I don't know how a person can be sad for that long. I'm not that kind of a person. Everything is perfect in my life. I can't find an imperfection. Okay, I'm a very happy man. I can't see an imperfection. But she is all the times that I try to show her, see how many things we have and nice life, we are so blessed, and she cries because she can't work. So for her, she has given a lot of importance to work and nothing else. So she has become extremely depressed. When I see from my point of view, I don't see a reason.
Okay, we want to welcome a couple more of our members here. James.
Hi.
And
Carolyn.
Carolyn, yes, I remember you. It's been a little while since.
It's been a while.
Yes, it's great to see you again.
Nice place.
Thanks. And, so, what we're doing here is discussing the meaning of life, obviously. Did you all come prepared to give a 15-word summary of your view of the meaning of life?
Mine's fairly simple. I think the meaning of life is to live, and I don't just mean for your own pleasure, but I think Martin Luther King put it best: if your lot in life is to be a garbage person, pick up garbage in the best that you possibly can. That's my meaning of life, to live.
It's good.
I just got my acceptance note today,
Oh.
so I didn't really prepare anything, but I think this has something to do with fear. Our meaning in life has something to do with overcoming fear on a minute-by-minute basis.
When I say everybody has to find their own meaning, I think I'm hoping that people will find
This way, I guess.
some, deep meaning to doing something purposeful with their life. Is kind of what I was getting at. Not just whatever strikes you at the moment, or
Makes sense.
but like I said, I think everybody has to determine what they think is purposeful themselves.
Wow.
My interpretation is Sue, right? What she's saying is everyone has to find their goal. I wouldn't necessarily call it purpose or meaning. These words don't really mean a lot to me in this context at this time. But we all definitely need to find our goal, our driving force in life, and we all ultimately set the criteria by which we determine whether or not we live a satisfying life. Whether or not that constitutes meaning or purpose, I'll just say the jury's still out there.
Definite chief aim is authors like Napoleon Hill call it definite chief aim. Do you just definite chief aim?
Chief aim?
It's just the same thing. It's more of a goal that you set for yourself and keep your eye on the goal. something
That's
that
one left
uplifts you
over.
and improves you as a person.
Remember, there's really two questions that's really part of this discussion. One is a discussion of our individual purpose, what we're supposed to be doing here. Okay? Then the other bigger question, more philosophical question is there any ultimate meaning in life? Is there a reason that we are here as the human race? And I think we're trying to answer maybe both of those questions. Okay, let's take 10 minutes here.
Okay.
Discuss this.
Okay, well, anyway, I always like to start at the beginning, and the beginning is pretty much that human beings and all other living things are created with a will to survive. And that is more of an evolutionary thing, in that any organism that doesn't have the will to survive will not. I would say that everybody in this room, if you didn't have the will to survive, you'd probably be dead in about 5 minutes, because you wouldn't remember to breathe. Okay, the second thing I wanted to say was that human beings, and I want to probably should jump in right away and say that in many ways all living things are similar, but of course human beings are obviously different, but there are a lot of things that are similar. And so that's why we'll usually say human beings and all other living things are only capable of doing two things, and that is pursuing happiness and trying to avoid unhappiness. So everything everyone does, every minute, every second of every day from the time you're born to the time you die, is doing one of those two things. Either pursuing happiness or trying to avoid unhappiness. Now, the happiness and avoiding unhappiness can mean completely different things to different people. So, somebody might be a masochist, for example, and I hope I don't make any really bad setup like you got stuck with. But at any rate, as a masochist, they, like for somebody to hurt them, I presume, in just certain ways, where somebody else might not go for that at all. But that makes a masochist happy, if you will. And the same thing goes with avoiding unhappiness. Some things make people unhappy. And for example, Ram's wife is completely different from you. So anyway, it's important to keep those two things in mind. And the next thing is people cannot do anything they don't want to do. And I'll use as my example, if someone decides they're going to rob you and puts a gun to you and says, give me your money, you have two options. You can just stand there, or you can give them your money. So you are probably going to give them your money, which is something you actually want to do. Your brain has to signal your body, whatever parts that are involved, to do that action. So that means you are doing something you want to do. Now, it's not, and this is a little bit strange, because you really don't want to do it, but you know that that's the best choice, so that is what you want to do. So no matter what you do, you can't do anything you don't want to do.
How about addictions, though? Enter in. Because the addict certainly doesn't want to use, but they can't stop themselves.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that or not.
I mean, without intervention.
And I'm not sure if I agree with that either. And this is, I can't really speak to that well, but an awful lot of people stop drinking because they decide they want to stop drinking. It finally gets to be such a problem in their life that's what I have heard people say, that they finally get so low that that's what finally causes them to decide they're going to stop. So if you're you have a somewhat unusual situation where I'm sure it's possible to have drugs that people can't get off of by themselves. And I don't know how you can, but that's kind of a separated thing from what you might ordinarily do when you were free to actually make a choice. It's just like, for example, if you're in, this is going to be bad, if you're standing by the Grand Canyon and somebody beside you slips and pushes you and you go off into the Grand Canyon, I would say that wasn't what you wanted to do, but that's because somebody physically forced you to do something.
What if I sleptwalked off the Grand Canyon?
There's actually some truth in that, because about 3 people, I think, a year do fall in the Grand Canyon, and mostly they're trying to take a picture and they start walking backwards and they just go too far.
I've heard stories of the gorge. People are camping at night and they can't see and they fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
That's not intentional. What he's saying is
Right.
nobody can force you to do something,
Right.
even lift a little finger, unless you want to do it yourself. That you are in charge of your space and your body. And if you choose to throw off the Grand Canyon, so be it.
Yeah, without somebody exerting physical force on you. So if there was only one person on the planet, the will to survive and the pursuit of happiness / avoidance of unhappiness, and they're really very close to the same thing. It's almost a continuum, and many things are part of both. For example, if the brownies over there, you might be eating the brownies because you're not being hungry makes you unhappy. And the other part of it is eating the brownies will make you happy. And so many things are part of those two. And so it's kind of a continuum of happiness and unhappiness.
So you're saying the meaning of life is the pursuit of happiness?
No, I didn't get... Well, actually, that's part of it. And actually what I'm saying is, if there was only one person on the planet, the pursuit of happiness, the avoidance of unhappiness, and the will to survive would be the meaning of life. But of course that's not the case. So, but I did want to kind of integrate the other part of this.
Of course, there's utilitarianism, which is the idea that the best thing is to pursue happiness for everyone. I mean, that's the right thing. You know, the pursuit of happiness, not just for me, but for all.
There's actually a lot to be said with that, as long as one person's pursuit of happiness is not interfering with another person's pursuit of happiness and or avoidance of unhappiness.
What's the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the long run? But you see, somebody may have to be sacrificed for that goal, which is a difficult problem.
I mean, not that I disagree with you, but the problem that could be faced with that line of thinking is that in a closed system with limited resources, in order for people to be happy, someone else has to not be happy, assuming happiness requires one of those resources.
Okay, well now you really need to move to the other handout, which is what's the difference? And I talk about that a little bit in this, and like I say, it would have been nice if I could have had time to integrate these two things, but I didn't. And it talks about a little bit about free will and rational free will. All living things have free will, in theory. And most living things engage in rational free will. Whether it be animals or bacteria or whatever, they usually don't materially damage one another. Usually bacteria won't eat their own kind of bacteria. Now, obviously there may be some exceptions to this, but in general, lions don't eat other lions, and so on and so forth. And people are actually supposed to engage in rational free will, and to a large extent they do, but they don't completely do that. And which would be nice if they did, but they don't. So that's the main part of what I wanted to say.
Would you mind giving us a conclusion or summing it up?
Well, yeah, I would if I could, but like I said, I didn't get finished.
All right.
So I just wanted to give you the base. I think the basic stuff that I had is worthwhile toward looking at everything else. But so hopefully I'll be able. I'm sure you know it takes a long time to put all these things together and make it.
This is a good contribution. Chris, you have a comment, question?
It was just kind of going forward with what you're saying. You're saying like the pursuit of happiness is a central goal or principle, or that is the purpose of life.
Well, it's certainly a large part of it, because that's the only two things people are capable of doing, is either pursuing happiness or avoiding unhappiness. There's no other thing you could. Well, let's say we look at it, the other two possibilities which aren't possible, and one of them is that you try and avoid happiness. So nobody can really try and avoid happiness, because you can define that as that's what makes them happy. Did everybody get that, or did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and then the other half of it is.
So the next question is like, what is the criteria? I guess if that's the right word. What is the criteria for happiness? If we're talking about the meaning of life, and happiness is right there next to it, isn't there something more? What's the criteria for being happy, or is it greater principles that lead us to
happiness is different from everybody, for each person. It varies.
So it is ultimately subjective.
Yes, well, it has to be.
It has to be, okay.
So if you take an individual, they are going to, like I say, they're capable of doing only two things. Either pursuing happiness or trying to avoid unhappiness. And that is totally subjective to that person.
What if someone never had any happiness with their life, then have no meaning?
People have happiness. Everything you do is, if I have an itch, then if I don't scratch the itch, it's going to be unhappiness, unpleasant for me. And if I do scratch the itch, it'll bring me happiness to a certain extent, just for that little bit. And as soon as that happens, then you're off to the next thing. Is taking a breath what's going to, make me happy next? And if I don't breathe, obviously it's going to make me unhappy. And maybe that's not a great example, but this is a moving target. Everything that happens is it going to be avoid unhappiness, or is it going to...
So your answer to the question, why are we here, is to be happy. That'd be a good summary.
Well, that's only part of it. Well, let me
Well, let me.
go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead. I'm sorry.
I do find interesting. You make the distinction between what it means to be human and what it means to be an animal. The distinction is morality. Where does that difference come from? Why are we moral and animals not moral, amoral?
I can't answer that.
How do we know animals don't have morality?
I've
We
seen some
don't have
animals
Yeah,
seem
I
pretty
know
darn
one
sad
too.
when, it's like,
Yeah.
when they did something bad. But does that constitute? I don't know.
And there was a recent study done with chimpanzees where if you have two chimpanzees and you ask them to do a task and you give one a grape and the other one a grape, great, they continue to do the task. Then they continue to do that same task, you give one 3 grapes and the other one 1 grape. The monkey that only got 1 grape threw it back at the tester. And she's like, okay, did it again. They both performed the same task. One got 3, one got 1. That monkey got really upset. And so, is that
I think
a challenge
I
to
saw
that
that.
morality?
I saw that. So cucumber versus a grape. I
Whatever
think.
it was,
Yeah.
I can't remember what.
So grape is more valuable to them, like more money, versus a cucumber. So it's like rewarding. So
Yeah.
they understand the reward, and they get very pissed off if you don't give them equal reward.
But
They
you
knew
could
there
argue-
was- they knew
you
there
could
was
argue that
unfair
that's,
treatment.
You know,
They did the
behavior
same
is an
thing and
awkward
got different
conditioning.
results.
Yeah.
So.
Is that
Well, would you say that then they know the difference between right and wrong?
Now they can
what I'm
compare.
posing. Do they have a sense of right and wrong and morality? They're saying
Yeah.
that's unfair.
Unfair.
They're doing the same thing and they're getting more reward than I am.
Yeah.
That could be possible if that's used as a basis for what's right and wrong. And actually, I guess you could say that it was wrong to treat one differently than another. It's too bad the government hasn't figured that out.
I have a quick follow-up question on what you mean by happiness.
Well, again, it varies so much by person. Something that could make one person happy might not make another person happy at all.
What is the happy self? No matter what it is that makes the person happy, just what is it? What is
So
it?
do you equate satisfaction with happiness?
Well, that could be, yes.
I see happiness or the pursuit of happiness or the will to survive more as a property of a human and not as a meaning or a purpose for our life.
Well, no, I agree with you. What I had to say is what forms the basis of our basic behavior, if you will, if you don't mind my using that twice. And those things come into play. For example, the will to survive is different when you just have one person than when you have a group of people. And the will to survive is, seen in the animal kingdom too, is where the group has a survival thing and people contribute to the survival of the group. We raise families. That's part of this survival thing, and it also builds a nurturing kind of thing for other people besides just our families. And so when somebody needs help or is poor or something like that, we have a tendency to want to help them, and I think a lot of that may come from the will to survive. And so this is just the basic kind of stuff that helps explain how we work with more advanced topics, if you will.
I have a presentation, and we have another one here, so we're halfway done with we have 2 presentations to go. We got half of them done.
Is yours about motorcycles?
It's about intensity.
I forgot to actually print out a handout, but I can maybe at the end do something like that. But I just have a PowerPoint right now, so I'll just click through this.
So you're going to give us the answer?
I'm going to try to give you the answer, yes. But let's start off by giving you some quotes here. I'm Paul Sartre. Life is nothing until it is lived. that it is yours to make sense of. The value of life is nothing other than the sense you choose. So I think we see some subjectivism in this perspective. Life has the meaning we give it. It has our richness, our enthusiasm, our pride, or our cowardice. I think maybe all of us could agree to some extent that that's true. Although, if it's meant to be completely subjective, then I would disagree with that. These then are my last words to you, says William James. Be not afraid of life. Believe that life is worth living, and your belief will help create the fact. What do you think about that? The fact that we believe that my life has meaning, and that'll help produce that fact.
Yeah,
I thought there was something to that.
That resonates with me. I believe that belief is the crux of reality, so whatever we believe will manifest before our eyes.
Okay. How about Eric Fromm's quote here? Man is the only animal for whom his own existence is a problem which he has to solve and from which he cannot escape. And that's why we're here today. And that's why we're going to have to have another meetup to get everybody else in. Okay. What is the point of life when we come to the end? I thought that was a good question because the question isn't just, what is my meaning right now? What's the point right now? But when it's all said and done, at the very end of my life, or when my life is over, what's the point? She asked this, the question of, what is the meaning of life to her husband? And he said, the purpose of life is to do what makes you come alive. When you stop, you die. Sense of which that's true?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christina.
Yeah, the blogger, just the blogger. Zev, who was a member of the Jewish Underground, said, live what you are willing to die for.
Perfect.
If you want, another rabbi said, if you want to live, be real. Know what you are willing to die for. Then you are genuinely alive and able to truly achieve the highest form of pleasure from living. I think that's a motivation to reflect on who we are and what we're supposed to do with our life. Okay. Maybe some of you followed some of those links that I posted. Here is Casper Addyman. He threw out a question, this question of what is the meaning of life, to 643 professional philosophers. Only 20 of them responded. And one of them was from Andrew Belsey, who said, Dear Mr. Addyman, the meaning of life is preparation for death. I hope that you are well prepared. Yours sincerely, Andrew Belsey.
Actually, that is very true.
Yeah, I liked it because, as all of you know, I believe in an afterlife, and so it's particularly important that we're ready for that. Here's something I think probably reflects some of the way that many of you here think about this. Well, personally, I think that we make our own meaning. I don't think meaning is something that comes from outside. I think it's something that comes from our human culture, family, friendship, values, laws, and a lot of other things. But because we make our own meaning of life, that doesn't mean it's somehow not a proper meaning of life. That's Alan Winfield. From Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. This was a movie that was screened a couple weeks ago in preparation for this philosophy cafe up at NKU, which I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead this discussion Friday afternoon. And knowing that I was going to lead this, the organizer there set that movie up for people to watch, which I didn't go to. But anyway, this is the quote that I found at the end of the movie. Here is whoever that is that said that he pulled out a envelope, reads this paper, says, well, the meaning of life, well, it's nothing very special. Try to be nice to people, avoid eating fat, read a good book every now and then, get some walking in, and try to live together in peace and harmony with people of all creeds and nations. And then he just threw the thing on the floor. And, so, is that the meaning of life?
Harmony never resonates with me.
Yeah, that's obviously, those are good things. Yeah. But it's not like, I mean, he kind of dismissed it like it's nothing special. Well, I think
But it's so simple. It's so simple. It's right in front of our
simple
eyes.
Yeah. Okay, now the Westminster Shorter Catechism, to move into more Christian view of this. First question is, what is the chief end or purpose of man? This is the very first question. That's to do with the meaning of life. First, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. So, the pleasure principle, happiness in God. Baltimore Catechism says, God made me to know Him, to love Him, and to serve Him in this world, and to be happy with Him forever in heaven. The Christian view. According to Christianity, the purpose for all of us is to glorify God through having a love relationship with Him, our Creator. God desires to have a personal relationship with every member of the human race, but we broke that relationship with God by our rebellion against Him. That relationship with God can be restored. Reconciliation. We come back into union with God by turning from our sins and putting our trust in God's Son, Christ, who became a human while remaining God, so that He could die for our sins and destroy sin and death through His resurrection, His bodily resurrection. Now, because He lives, we can live spiritually and someday live in heaven with Him in resurrected bodies forever. That kind of sums up the Christian view of this. Our whole purpose in life is to glorify God and enjoy Him together forever, and to be reconciled to Him because of the separation, to be reconciled back to God. Now, I think that can be summarized in fewer words, but that's kind of a long paragraph. Now, there's a distinction then, though, between everyone's purpose and our specific purpose, which may be different. Each of us also have a unique purpose for our lives. God has a particular plan He wants each of us to follow, and we find God's will by reading the Bible and praying for leadership. Okay. Any other reaction to this before we move on? Okay. Now, how many of you have read The Purpose-Driven Life, or you've seen the book, the bookshelves? You've seen it? Okay, you've seen it. You know of it. Okay, you know of it. Yeah. Very well. Anybody know who the author is?
Warren.
Rick Warren. Yeah.
Did his kid die?
Yes.
Yeah. That's very sad.
It is.
Yeah. I think right now he's been called America's pastor or something like that. He's that book has sold millions, tens of millions, I think, by now, of copies. I overheard a leader from Zondervan, who published it, who said they had to create a whole separate division just for that book in that publishing house. They just to produce that book. Anyway, The Purpose-Driven Life. And what I have here is a summary of like maybe the first chapter or the introduction of that. He said that most of the time we're answering the wrong questions. The central question for ourselves and the world should be, what on earth am I here for? In other words, what's the purpose for my life? And he talks about Ecclesiastes and all his vanity. Anybody ever read Ecclesiastes? Talks like that, all his vain. But it's because if all you live for is this life, accumulate things, in the end, it's all in vain. So anyway, he says that there are 3 negative effects of not knowing the purpose for your life based on Ecclesiastes. Life seems tiresome, a treadmill that doesn't go anywhere. Life seems unfulfilling with nothing new or satisfying. Life seems uncontrollable. We can't change what's crooked. And we have 2 options. We can make up our own purpose to life, perhaps by throwing ourselves into our work or a hobby, or we can seek to discover what God created us for. To do so, we must begin with God. And when we know God's purpose for us, life has focus with incredible power, like a laser. Life is simpler. We have time to do what God designed for us. Life has motivation. We see need, which increases determination. And he also says that life is a preparation for eternity, a short prelude to forever. And then he says, when our time on earth is over, God will ask us 2 questions. So what are those 2 questions? Okay. What did you do with my son Jesus? And what did you do with your life?
I don't understand
You don't
the
remember?
first one.
The first one?
Yeah, what did you do with?
Well, did you receive Christ? Did you
Oh,
make him
okay.
Lord of your life? Did you follow him? Did you become a disciple of my son?
Did you honor? Did that fit in there? Did you honor?
Like honor my son?
Honor Jesus? Can we use that word?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what did you do with your life? So there's stewardship here. Because we're held accountable for our works, what we do with our life. So.
But isn't that earning?
Earning?
That second question is sort of puts the onus on the person. It's not just Jesus dying for your sins and
Yeah.
that forgiveness and accepting that. But that sort of says, and you have to do something to have earned.
Well, our rewards are based on what we do. So we are received into heaven based on receiving Christ into our life, making him Lord, following him. But
You might get a
our
lower bump.
judge, what?
But you might get a lower bump.
Well, not literally.
Not as many
Literally.
virgins.
The way I talk about it, I think those who serve God with better motives, accomplish more, do more for God, they'll enjoy heaven more. Back to happiness. I think.
Is that in the Bible?
It says that we will be rewarded according to our works. Yeah, that if I give someone a cup of water in the name of Christ, I will in no wise lose my reward. So there are rewards based on our performance. And I think the Bible also teaches degrees of punishment and hell as well. So, and that's part of the justice of God. Although you make a great point because according to Protestant theology, we enter into fellowship with Christ, with God, in a moment of time based on turning away from our sin and receiving Jesus. And now that doesn't mean that's all there is to it, but we have to keep following Jesus. But it is by faith. But our rewards are based on our performance.
That's in the Quran too.
You're not going to see justification by faith in the Quran.
No,
But
the
reward
rewards
part,
based on what you do. Yeah.
So
what
is
if
it
you've
like
never,
a,
what if you've never heard of Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
What's that?
What if you've never heard of Jesus Christ? So if you've
I
been brought
actually-
up in the middle of the jungle, nowhere, all
Yeah.
by
I had
yourself,
that
and
question
you-
in my mind.
I actually have written a paper on that. I presented at a theological forum about a year ago. I could let you read it if you want.
that would be very interesting.
About a quick synopsis.
Yeah, what about a person who's like mentally disabled
Yeah,
and is maybe not able to conceptualize, really understand that?
yeah.
So what happens to that person?
They're covered because they're not.
They got the
Because
insurance
they-
Have insurance. Get it anytime you're born on the mental disability.
Well, babies would not be accountable because they haven't willfully rejected God or done things that they know is wrong, that they know are wrong. So someone who's severely mentally handicapped would be in the same situation that a very young child would be.
I have a lot to
But
do.
it-
I can't resist. So is that a pre-existing condition? And what about original sin? How does that?
would be a pre-existing.
Yeah, the original sin is a propensity that propels me into sin, but I'm not culpable for it. In other words, I'm not damned to hell because I was born with something. There are some theologies that talk like that. I totally reject that.
So is heaven based like an incentive based thing? We're serving God, so we get rewarded in heaven.
No. There are rewards, but ultimately, it's about a personal love relationship with God. So my motivation for serving God is because I love Him, I want to please Him. It's a love relationship. That's what it's all about. Now, rewards can be an incentive. I mean, Jesus told His disciples that if you follow me, then you're going to get this and that, and in this life, and the life to come, eternal life. So there is an incentive. So there is a motivation. He motivates us through our desire for pleasure. But that's not a problem. Because ultimately, it's about a love relationship. It's not just a performance-based.
I thought a love relationship would be serving God to serve God, doing good for the sake of doing good, regardless if there's a reward or incentive at the end.
Sure, but it's like it's value added. It's
Icing on the cake.
icing on the cake. I mean, in your relationship with your wife or whatever, there's the icing on the cake. You do things because you love them, but there are nice rewards along the way as well. There's nothing illegitimate about that.
Well, there is actually. I think it does a disservice to God, and I think it turns people away from God. And I think it's using a whip or a carrot. So therefore, it's insulting and belittling to somebody who would follow a path of faith, and it insults people who do not choose that path, who have
Well,
a different path of faith.
That
And
is
it belittles God because that God would even think of punishment and rewards as
that if you were right, it would be belittling your kids, belittling grade school children, high school, the employees at a business to do that sort of thing. We're always motivated by either fear of punishment or promise of reward. Anyway, let me move on here.
Happiness and unhappiness.
Yeah, there
There
you
is a
go.
third part I want to say.
Yeah, but I don't tease my kids with the bad thing and then punish them for doing it.
Yeah. I
I don't believe that's the way God works. I don't believe God teases the carrot that they never were able to reach. I don't believe that.
Well, you create somebody with the propensity to do those things. And then
No,
for doing
no,
it.
man willfully.
I didn't create my children with the ability to do terrible things and then punish them for doing the terrible things.
No,
They're born with the set of restrictions
No,
in their minds that they have no choice over.
Well, Christian theology says that that God created man perfect, but that man chose to go his own way.
He made man with
Man
the ability
with,
to choose.
with the capacity to choose. The That
Right. Why?
because
You're going to punish him.
because
Give him the
that's,
ability
that's
to
the,
choose.
because that's the only way that there could be a genuine love relationship. If it was forced love, that would be an oxymoron.
We didn't say love. We're not talking about forced love. We're talking about forced obedience.
But the reason he made us was for love. Can there be meaning without God? Yes. If all you mean is that one creates his own meaning, and I think we would agree with this, right? If there's no God, we basically have to create our own meaning. I think that's pretty much what Sue, you said. Yeah. However, there wouldn't be a single overriding purpose for everyone. There would be no ultimate meaning. And once everything is all gone, nothing really matters. And would we agree with that as well? There's no ultimate meaning. I think that's really what you said.
I think that's the part I don't know.
Yeah.
If there will eventually be determined to be some ultimate meaning. I don't know.
Okay.
What does that mean once everything is all
Yeah.
gone? What is meant by that?
Well, once the universe dies, the seat death, everything's cold and lifeless, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's over. Great.
So you're saying once humanity is on Earth is dead, that's what it means. Everything is gone because we don't know. Once the universe burns up, we don't know there won't be any life.
Yeah. No. Well, according to the laws of thermodynamics, that's where we're headed, and we know that.
I mean, no human
unless
life.
there's intervention. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, there would be nothing to look forward to in the next life, like 70 versions or whatever. If you guys can humor me, I'm gonna let you watch a 2-minute clip of William Lane Craig.
Oh no.
Sue's nemesis here.
I've probably already seen it.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we distinguish between objective meaning in life and subjective meaning in life. By objective meaning in life, I mean that there is a meaning of human existence in the universe which is independent of human opinion. By subjective meaning, I mean a meaning or significance that a person makes up himself and attributes to his own life. For example, someone might say, well, the meaning of my life is to bat 400 in the major leagues and hit 40 home runs every year. And that would be his subjective meaning in life. But there may or may not be an objective meaning and reason for his existence. And what I would argue is that if God does not exist, then on atheism, it's very difficult to see that there is any objective meaning to existence. Human beings are simply accidental byproducts of nature which are doomed to perish individually and collectively in a relatively short time. The whole universe will eventually perish as all the stars burn out and energy is used up. The universe will finally be simply a cold, dark, lifeless place of expanding particles into the endless void. No light, no heat, no life, just endless darkness as the universe expands forever. So it seems to me that in the absence of God, there really is no objective meaning and purpose to human existence or to the universe. And a great many atheists, I think, would agree with that. What that means is then that the petty projects and purposes that we invent for our lives are really just subjective illusions. They're not really objectively or ultimately meaningful. They're just, in a sense, like shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. Meaningless activities which we can engage in, but we're all going down.
Okay, the absurdity of life without God. Now, the arguments for the existence of God show that it is more likely than not that God exists. Now, some of you won't agree with that, but remember how unlikely it is that the universe is fine-tuned by chance. I know in here we said, well, but it's still possible that the universe is the way it is just by chance. But possible is not the same as likely. But even if the evidence for each option that God exists or he doesn't is equal, a rational person ought to believe in God. The following outline that I got from William Lane Craig, I worked it, but it explains why. If God does not exist, then all human life, as well as every individual life, will eventually be destroyed. If there is no God, and by God we mean the all-powerful, perfectly good creator of the world who offers us eternal life, if there is no God and no life beyond the grave, then life itself has no objective meaning, value, or purpose. And I'd like for us to at least agree on that. We're not saying that atheists experience dull or meaningful lives, that they have no personal values or lead immoral lives. Life would be unbearable and livable without such beliefs. But given atheism, these beliefs are all subjective illusions, the mere appearance of meaning, value, and purpose. So how this affects meaning. Without immortality, your life has no ultimate significance and makes no difference to the world's outcome. If everything is doomed to destruction, then what does it matter that you've influenced anything? But it takes more than immortality for life to have meaning. For example, here's this science fiction story of a marooned astronaut. He's on a chunk of rock lost in outer space. He has 2 vials. If he drank from one, he would live forever. The other one was poison. Realizing his predicament, which one is he going to choose? The poison. But he ended up choosing the wrong one. He drank the one that would give him life eternal. That meant he was cursed to exist forever, a meaningless, unending life. How would you like to be in that situation? So,
Sign me up.
That's what
sign you up. Sign you up. You like, okay.
Might be an interesting world.
You could really spend time thinking about what
Yeah, I guess you'd have time to figure it out. Huh? Well, if God doesn't exist, our lives are like that. They could go on and on and on and still be utterly without meaning. We could still ask of life, so what? Without God, there is no broader framework within man's life, within which man's life can be seen to matter. Okay, how this affects value. And this is where some ethics come into this, because this is an issue of value. If life ends at the grave, then it makes no ultimate difference whether you live as a Stalin or as a Mother Teresa. Without immortality, there's no moral accountability, and your moral choices become inconsequential. Now, you may experience some pain right now, but ultimately, there's no accountability. Richard Wurmbrand, a pastor tortured for his faith, said this: "The communist torturers often said," again, this is not trashing atheists. I have plenty of atheist friends who live very good lives. There's no, but listen to this. The communist torturers often said, "There is no God, no hereafter, no punishment for evil. We can do what we wish." I've heard one torturer even say, "I thank God, in whom I don't believe, that I have lived to this hour when I can express all the evil of my heart." He expressed it in unbelievable brutality and torture inflicted on prisoners. Without God, moral values are just illusions ingrained into us by evolution and social conditioning, because we're just products of chance. On the atheist view, there's nothing special with human beings. They're just accidental byproducts of nature that have evolved relatively recently on an infinitesimal speck of dust called the planet Earth, and doomed to perish in a relatively short time. Richard Dawkins' assessment: there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good. There is no morality. Nothing but pointless indifference. We are machines for propagating DNA. It is every living object's sole reason for being. How this affects purpose. Without immortality, your only destination is extinction and death. Without God, there's no purpose for which you came into this world. You're simply a blind product of chance. Life is utterly without reason. All we are left with is despair. Nietzsche predicted that someday modern man would realize the implications of atheism, and this realization would usher in an age of nihilism, the destruction of all meaning and value in life. What do you want to react so far?
This is kind of, I mean, what I see here is like an either or. You know, there's 2 choices. There's God as the person and the deity, and then there's just human animality. So I'm wondering, is there, another option such as, I don't know, some sort of divine order that is not, that perhaps we can't understand, that is not a person or
yes,
yeah,
a third way.
like a pantheistic
believe in
view.
a third way.
Yeah, third way.
I think that there definitely is. I think that the humanization of God is a barrier to accepting God in our life. I think you assume in your argument many things, and to keep it on to just speaking about the meaning of life, to assume that there has to be a meaning of life is based on the assumption that we are separate beings and that we are living lives not connected to anything else. It assumes that humans are superior to everything else in existence, and the assumptions are...
The only point I'm making here is that unless you have a God who is perfectly good, who is powerful, who is able to give you eternal life and have a relationship with you, then how could your life ultimately have any meaning? Now, what you're saying is, well, life doesn't really have to have meaning. Well, that's fine. If that's your position, that's fine. I'm just saying that it doesn't have ultimate meaning unless there is a God, unless there is immortality. This is basically the last point. It's impossible to live consistently and happily with an atheist worldview. If we live happily as atheists, it is only by inconsistently affirming meaning, value, and purpose for our lives, despite the lack of foundation for them. Without God, the universe would have meaning only if I give it meaning and you give it meaning. But suppose I give it one meaning and you give it another. Well, who's right? Well, neither. The universe without God remains objectively meaningless, no matter how we happen to regard it. And I think we're being honest enough to say, yes, the universe doesn't have ultimate meaning without God, and we are putting our meaning into it, but it's just an illusion, right? It's just an appearance of if believing there's no God, we ascribe meaning to the universe. All we really are doing is saying, let's pretend that the universe has meaning. And this is just fooling ourselves, and we live inconsistent with our worldview. But if we live consistently as atheists, we shall be profoundly unhappy and even in despair because we know our lives are really meaningless, worthless, and purposeless. On the other hand, biblical Christianity provides a coherent worldview. According to biblical Christianity, God exists. Life does not end at the grave. Biblical Christianity thereby affirms the two conditions sufficient for the meaningful, valuable, and purposeful life, God and immortality. Biblical Christianity therefore supplies a framework within which one can live consistently and happily. So, why not look into the truth of biblical Christianity? Right? What's your...
Keep it excellent.
Yeah, I'll go back to slide.
This one here. All right.
So William Lane Craig. His big argument seems to be that if there's no objective meaning, that the subjective meanings are worthless. Would you say that is his position?
An illusion, an appearance.
Illusion, worthless. Are we preaching the same words there?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what he says.
Yeah.
Is that the subjective meanings, and I'm using the term loosely, are worthless because there's no objective meaning. But I don't see how he logically reaches that conclusion. He does it through an equivocation fallacy by continuously using the word meaning and sometimes using it to mean subjective meaning and sometimes using it to mean objective meaning. Let's see. And also he says when we ascribe meaning to the universe, no one's talking about meaning to the universe. the whole question of what is the meaning of life is kind of a loaded question if we assume that we mean the objective meaning of life. But if you're not answering that question, and it's never a question to begin with, all of this argument goes out the window.
I agree with that. I agree with that. So what you're saying, so you are admitting that there is no ultimate meaning to life.
I personally would admit that, yes.
Okay.
But I don't know that that deteriorates from the individual meanings that we still live in our lives. I think those are still very valid, valuable, and ultimately those are the things that we have to.
Well, even I would agree that we each have our own particular purpose, niche that we fill, individual purpose. So, but I think we need to really. I think it's a point well taken that in the end, all of those meanings are just temporary. They're ultimately come to naught. Okay.
He's my master, Paramahansa Nityananda. So I'm inspired by his comments on meaning of life or purpose of life. Okay. Awakening to the life itself. Becoming intense to the life itself is the purpose of life. There is no separate purpose of life. If you say there is a separate purpose, then life becomes meaningless and purpose becomes meaningful, as if you are selling your life to achieve that purpose. Life does not have a separate purpose. Beauty of purposelessness. Life is purposeless. If you understand this, you will understand the meaning of life. Life has a meaning but has no purpose. Awakening to the life itself is the purpose of life. Be intense in whatever you are doing. Let the intensity be added to your life. External versus internal purpose. People who enjoy external infrastructure, comforts, become politicians. Just for example. They think achieving external things is the purpose of life. People who enjoy internal silence, peace, become spiritual or religious leaders. They think to achieve the inner peace is the purpose of life. When you achieve the purpose of life, both will happen to you. But if you make any one of the above as purpose, you will miss the other. And a lot of confusion and chaos will be experienced. The apurnatva, which means missing something, the feeling of missing something, will start happening within you when you choose one or the other. So don't choose. External or internal. Intensity is the meaning of life. Neither the outward infrastructure nor the inner world of silence alone can be the purpose of life. If one is running behind the silence, he will never achieve it. You will end up more and more disturbed because any small thing can become a disturbance for you. Intensity is the only purpose of life.
Is this a Hindu teaching?
It's a Eastern spiritual teaching. This is from Bhagavad Gita, what this master was saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say, I think everyone was nitpicking you.
That's fine. I enjoyed it.
Sounds, what I took away from it, and I don't think there is a greater meaning of life, so I'm not sold on that, but I did take away something from what you said is that don't be so obsessed with the future that you forget to enjoy the present.
Correct.
Which I know that I do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I think that's the message.
Take the time to enjoy the moment, and you've improved the moment, and thus your life.